Dylan Cross stood in the doorway of the rotting Victorian mansion, toolbox in hand, staring at the woman who just told him she didn't need saving. She needed silence. Serena Vale wasn't asking for help. She was buying it. And the warning in her eyes made it clear. Fix what's broken, take your money, and forget you were ever here. But when Dylan pulled back the first wall panel and saw what she'd been hiding, he realized some secrets don't stay buried. And some warnings come too late. If you're hooked, stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The house looked like it was giving up. Dylan Cross had seen plenty of fixer-uppers in his 12 years running a contracting business, but this one felt different. The Victorian sat at the end of a gravel road outside Ridgemont, surrounded by overgrown hedges and skeletal trees that clawed at the gray October sky. Paint peeled from the siding in long strips. The porch sagged like a broken shoulder. Every window reflected nothing but clouds and dirt. He parked his truck beside a sleek black sedan that didn't belong anywhere near this much decay. The contrast was sharp enough to make him uneasy. Dylan grabbed his toolbox and clipboard, boots crunching on gravel as he approached the front steps. The wood groaned under his weight. He tested the second step, soft, nearly rotted through. He made a mental note and kept climbing. The door opened before he could knock. "You're late." The woman standing in the doorway wasn't what he'd expected. She was younger than her voice had sounded on the phone, maybe 30, sharp-featured, with dark hair pulled back tight enough to make a point. She wore a charcoal blazer over a white blouse, tailored pants, and heels that had no business being worn in a construction zone. Her expression was cold, controlled, like she'd practiced it in a mirror until it became permanent. Dylan checked his watch. "I'm 4 minutes early. Then you should have been here 10 minutes ago." He blinked. "Ma'am, the job starts at 9. It's 8:56. She stepped aside without responding, gesturing him in with a flick of her wrist. "Serena Vale. We spoke yesterday." "Dylan Cross." He stepped inside, and the smell hit him immediately. Mildew, old wood, something metallic underneath. The interior was worse than the exterior. Water stains bloomed across the ceiling. The wallpaper hung in strips. Exposed beams showed through cracked plaster in 3 different spots. Serena closed the door behind him, the sound echoing through the empty space. "I need this house structurally sound and passing inspection in 6 weeks. That's the deadline. Non-negotiable." Dylan set his toolbox down and pulled out a pen. 6 weeks is tight for a place like this. I'll need to see the foundation, the electrical, the plumbing. You'll see what I tell you to see." He looked up. She was watching him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "Ma'am, if I'm going to do this right, I need full access. Can't fix what I can't inspect." Serena's jaw tightened. For a moment, he thought she might throw him out. Then she exhaled slowly through her nose. "You work in the areas I designate. You don't go into locked rooms. You don't ask questions about what you find. And you don't talk to anyone about this job. Are we clear?" Dylan frowned. "That's not how I usually... I'm paying double your rate. Cash, half up front." She pulled an envelope from her blazer pocket and held it out. "Are we clear?" He stared at the envelope. Double his rate would cover his daughter's tuition for the next year, and then some. Maya's school had sent another reminder last week. "Payment overdue. Please remit immediately." He'd been trying to figure out how to stretch 3 jobs into 5. Dylan took the envelope. "We're clear." "Good." Serena turned on her heel and walked toward the staircase. "Start with the first floor. The wiring in the east wing is a fire hazard. I'll be upstairs if you need anything, which you won't." She disappeared up the stairs, heels clicking against wood that sounded like it might give out any second. Dylan stood alone in the foyer, envelope in hand, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. Ted. The wiring was worse than a fire hazard. It was a miracle the place hadn't burned down already. Dylan spent the first hour mapping out the electrical system, and every junction box he opened made him wince. Cloth-wrapped wires from the 1920s, spliced directly into modern Romex with electrical tape and hope. Exposed copper. Reversed polarity. One outlet was literally sparking when he tested it. He killed the main breaker and started documenting everything with his phone camera. Maya had taught him how to organize photos into folders last month, and he was still weirdly proud of himself for remembering. "What are you doing?" Dylan jerked around. Serena stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes fixed on his phone. Taking pictures for the repair estimate, standard procedure. Delete them. Excuse me? Delete the photos. Now, so. Dylan lowered his phone slowly. Ma'am, I need documentation for the work order. Insurance, permits, code compliance. I don't care about your process. Serena stepped closer, and he noticed for the first time how exhausted she looked beneath the makeup. Dark circles under her eyes. A tightness around her mouth that spoke of too many sleepless nights. No photos. No documentation beyond what I approve. That was implied in our agreement. It really wasn't. Her eyes flashed. Then let me be explicit. You take pictures, you violate our contract. You violate our contract, you leave without the second half of your payment. Understood? Dylan's jaw worked. He thought about Maya's tuition, about the truck payment due next week, about the fact that this woman was clearly hiding something and he was already in too deep. He deleted the photos. Serena watched until the last one disappeared, then nodded. Good, keep working. She left before he could respond. Dylan stood there for a long moment, staring at his empty camera roll, feeling something ugly settle in his stomach. This wasn't right. None of this was right. But he picked up his wire strippers and kept working anyway. By noon, Dylan had pulled enough bad wiring to fill 2 contractor bags. He was elbow deep in a wall cavity, trying to figure out why someone had run a live wire directly through a load-bearing stud when he heard footsteps on the stairs. Serena appeared in the doorway with 2 paper bags. Lunch. Dylan straightened, wiping dust from his hands. You didn't have to, I need you working, not passing out from low blood sugar. She set the bags on a paint-stained drop cloth and pulled out 2 wrapped sandwiches, 2 bottles of water, and 2 apples. Turkey or roast beef? Turkey's fine. She handed him the sandwich and a water bottle, then took the roast beef for herself. They ate in silence for a minute, standing in the gutted room like strangers at a bus stop. Dylan broke first. This house belonged to someone you knew? Serena's expression didn't change. That's a question. It's a question. And I told you not to ask them. You told me not to ask about what I find. This is about the house itself. She took a deliberate bite of her sandwich, chewing slowly. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat. My grandmother. She left it to me when she died 8 months ago. I'm sorry. Don't be. We weren't close. Serena took a sip of water. The property's been tied up in legal disputes. The estate finally cleared probate last month. I need it inspected and sellable before the buyer backs out. Dylan glanced around the damaged room. Selling it in this condition is none of your concern. She crumpled her sandwich wrapper with more force than necessary. Your concern is making sure it doesn't collapse before the inspector arrives. Can you do that or not? He met her eyes. They were gray, he realized. Storm cloud gray. Yeah, he said. I can do that. Then do it. She walked out, taking her lunch trash with her. Dylan finished his sandwich alone, thinking about the way her voice had cracked just slightly when she said the word grandmother. The afternoon brought worse news. Dylan found the water damage while checking the crawl space beneath the kitchen. The floor joists were rotted through in 3 places, held up by nothing but momentum and stubbornness. When he pressed his thumb against one beam, it sank into the wood like soft cheese. This wasn't 6 weeks of work. This was 6 months, maybe more. He climbed out of the crawl space and found Serena in what used to be a dining room, standing at a window with her phone pressed to her ear. Don't care what the timeline is, make it happen. She paused, listening. Then tell them I'll double their fee, triple it if necessary. I want that report on my desk by Friday, not next month. Another pause. Then they're not the right firm. Find someone else. She ended the call and turned to find Dylan watching her. What? Oi. All right. We need to talk about the foundation. Something flickered across her face. Fear, maybe, or anger, but it vanished before he could name it. How bad? Bad enough that I'm legally required to red tag the building if I don't see immediate remediation plans. Serena's fingers tightened around her phone. You're not red tagging anything. Ma'am, if someone gets hurt, no one's getting hurt because no one else is coming here. She crossed the room in 4 sharp strides, stopping close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something expensive and cold. You fix the foundation, you fix the wiring, you fix whatever else needs fixing, and you do it quietly. That's the job. The job was making this place pass inspection. I can't do that with rotted joists and illegal wiring and... Then figure it out. Her voice dropped lower, harder. You're a contractor, aren't you? Contract. Dylan's hands curled into fists at his sides. You're asking me to lie to a building inspector. I'm asking you to do what I'm paying you to do. I could lose my license. You could lose a lot more than that if you walk away now. The threat hung between them, sharp and unmistakable. Dylan took a slow breath, forcing his hands to unclench. What's really going on here? For a second, just a second, Serena's mask slipped. He saw exhaustion and desperation and something that might have been panic. Then she put it back on, smooth and cold as glass. That, she said quietly, is the kind of question that ends this conversation. She walked away before he could respond. Dylan worked until the sun started setting, pulling wire and cataloging damage, and trying not to think too hard about what he was getting into. Around 6, his phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Dad? When are you home? Taco Tuesday, remember? Shit. He'd completely forgotten. On my way soon, kiddo. Extra cheese? Dio. And sour cream. Love you. Love you too. He started packing his tools, layering everything back into the box with the careful precision that came from years of muscle memory. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Leaving already? Serena stood in his doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. She looked more human like this. Tired, rumpled, real. My daughter's expecting me. Something shifted in her expression. How old? 10, smart as hell, and twice as stubborn. She gets that from you? Her mother, actually. Dylan closed his toolbox. But I'm doing my best to keep up. Serena nodded slowly. What's her name? Maya. That's pretty. They stood there for a moment, the silence less hostile than before. I'll be back tomorrow, Dylan said. 7 a.m., if that works. Make it 6:30. He almost argued, then thought about the envelope in his truck. 6:30 it is. He was halfway to the door when she spoke again. Mr. Cross? He turned. Serena was still standing in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. Thank you for not walking out today. Dylan studied her face, the exhaustion, the fear she was trying so hard to hide. Tomorrow, he said, we talk about the foundation. For real this time. She didn't agree, but she didn't argue either. He took that as a win and headed home to his daughter. 1. The next 2 weeks fell into an uneasy rhythm. Dylan arrived before dawn and worked until dusk, tearing out bad wiring and reinforcing joists and slowly bringing the house back from the edge of collapse. Serena was always there, upstairs in a locked room he wasn't allowed to enter, or on her phone in rapid-fire conversations he couldn't quite hear, or watching him work with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. They didn't talk much, but they developed a pattern. Every day at noon, she brought lunch. Turkey sandwiches on Mondays and Wednesdays, roast beef on Tuesdays and Thursdays, pizza on Fridays. She never asked what he wanted. He never complained. Every evening before he left, he'd update her on the day's progress. She'd nod, ask sharp questions about timelines and budgets, then disappear back upstairs. And every night, he'd drive home wondering what the hell she was hiding in that locked room. On the 15th day, he found out. Dylan was working on the second-floor hallway, replacing a section of rotten floorboard, when his drill bit punched through into the crawl space below and hit something that crunched like glass. He pulled the drill back and aimed his flashlight into the hole. There were boxes down there, dozens of them, stacked in careful rows. His phone rang before he could investigate further. Maya's school. Mr. Cross? This is Principal Chen. I'm calling about Maya's tuition. I know. I'm working on it. We've been working with you for 3 months now. I'm afraid we'll need payment in full by the end of the month, or we'll have to withdraw her enrollment. Dylan closed his eyes. End of the month. I understand. He hung up and stared at the hole in the floor. Then he grabbed his crowbar and made it bigger. The boxes were filled with documents, financial records, legal filings, emails, photographs, everything carefully organized and labeled with dates going back 5 years. Dylan pulled out a folder at random and flipped it open. His breath caught. Vale Enterprises, but Internal Audit 2024. He recognized the name. Vale Enterprises was one of the biggest development firms in the state. They'd built half the commercial district in Ridgemont, bought up struggling properties across 3 counties, turned entire neighborhoods into luxury condos. And if these documents were real, they'd been doing it by bribing city officials, falsifying environmental reports, and intimidating residents into selling at a fraction of market value. What are you doing? Dylan spun around. Serena stood in the hallway, face pale, hands shaking. I hit a crawl space, he said slowly. Found these boxes. So you decided to go through my private property? These aren't private property. These are... He gestured at the files. These are evidence. Serena's jaw tightened. Put them back. Evidence of fraud, bribery, corporate corruption on a scale that put them back. Dylan held up a folder. Your company destroyed people's lives, families, communities, and you documented everything like you were proud of it. That, she said, voice shaking with something between rage and terror, is not my company. He stared at her. What? Serena stepped into the room, heels clicking on the damaged floor. Vale Enterprises was founded by my father, run by my uncle until he died 2 years ago, and managed into the ground by my ex-husband, who used my name and reputation to commit crimes I didn't know about until after the divorce was finalized. Dylan lowered the folder slowly. You're the CEO. In title only, I inherited the position when my ex was forced out. What I actually inherited was a company built on lies, with my signature on half the documents because I was stupid enough to trust him. She crossed her arms, defensive. I've spent the last 18 months trying to unravel everything he did, trying to find proof, trying to make it right. By hiding evidence in your dead grandmother's house? By keeping it somewhere my ex can't find it, her voice cracked. He's fighting the divorce, claiming I knew everything, threatening to bury me in litigation unless I sign over my shares and disappear quietly. If he finds these files before my lawyers can use them... She stopped, looking away. Dylan set the folder down carefully. Why not go to the police? Because half the documents implicate police officials. Because my ex has friends in the district attorney's office. Because I don't know who to trust and I'm running out of time. She met his eyes. The inspection deadline isn't about selling the house. It's about establishing legal ownership before my ex's lawyers can claim it as marital property. If I don't have clear title by the end of the month, he can freeze everything, including the evidence. Silence filled the space between them. Jesus, Dylan said quietly. Now you understand why I need someone who doesn't ask questions. Serena's voice steadied, cold control sliding back into place. Can you finish the job or not? Dylan looked at the boxes of evidence, at the woman standing in front of him, armor back on, pretending she wasn't terrified. He thought about Maya's tuition, about walking away clean, about what it cost to look the other way. I can finish it, he said. Relief flooded her face for half a second before she hit it. Good, then get back to work. She left him there with the files and the secrets and the weight of knowing things he shouldn't know. Dylan stared at the evidence for a long time. Then he carefully put everything back in the boxes, patched the floor, and got back to work. But that night, lying in bed next to Maya's sleeping form after she'd crawled in during a thunderstorm, he couldn't stop thinking about Serena's face when she talked about her ex, the fear behind the anger, the exhaustion behind the control. He thought about calling the cops, about walking away, about a dozen different exits. Instead, he set his alarm for 5 a.m. and decided to show up early tomorrow. Some warnings, he was starting to realize, came too late, and some jobs were never just about the house. Dylan showed up at 5:45 the next morning with 2 coffees and a plan he hadn't fully thought through. Serena's car was already in the driveway, which didn't surprise him. He was starting to suspect she never actually left. The house had that lived-in staleness, the smell of microwaved meals and stale air, and someone who'd been sleeping in their clothes. He found her in the kitchen, laptop open on a makeshift desk of plywood and sawhorses, surrounded by papers. She didn't look up when he entered. "You're early." "So are you." He set one coffee next to her elbow. Black, 2 sugars. Guessed. She glanced at the cup, then at him, something uncertain crossing her face. "Thank you." "You sleep here last night?" That's a question. It's concern. Serena's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "I had work to finish it." "There's a hotel 15 minutes away. Hotels have security cameras, check-in records, credit card trails." She took a sip of the coffee and closed her eyes briefly. This was a good guess. Dylan pulled up a paint bucket and sat down across from her. "How long since you slept in an actual bed?" "I don't see how that's relevant to the structural repairs." It's relevant to whether you collapse before we get this place inspection ready. Bolts. She looked at him over the rim of her cup, evaluating. "Why do you care?" "Because I need you conscious to sign off on invoices. Practical. I'm a practical guy." Something that might have been a smile threatened the corner of her mouth, but she killed it before it could fully form. "The foundation work, how much longer?" 3 weeks if we're lucky. 4 if we find more damage." He paused. "We're going to find more damage." Serena's shoulders sagged just slightly. "Of course we are. But I called in a favor. Got a buddy who owes me from a job last year. He can start on the crawl space Monday, speed things up." "I told you, no one else comes here. Marcus is solid. Doesn't talk, doesn't ask questions, shows up and works." Dylan met her eyes. "And we need him. I can't do foundation repair and rewire the second floor solo. Not in your timeline." She was quiet for a long moment, fingers drumming against the coffee cup. "This favor he owes you. What was the job?" "Helped him finish a project when his partner bailed. He was going to lose the contract. So he's unreliable. His partner was unreliable. Marcus is the guy who finished the job anyway." Dylan leaned forward. "Look, you can keep trying to control every single variable, or you can let me help you actually solve this thing. Your call." Serena stared at him, and he could see her running calculations behind those gray eyes. Risk assessment, threat analysis, the endless math of trying to stay 3 steps ahead of disaster. Finally, she nodded. "Monday. But he signs an NDA first. He's a contractor, not a lawyer. Everyone signs an NDA. I'll draft it today." Dylan almost argued, then decided to take the win. Fair enough. They sat there in this dusty kitchen, drinking coffee as weak morning light filtered through windows that desperately needed replacing. And for the first time since he'd taken this job, Dylan felt like they might actually be on the same side. Then Serena's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her whole body went rigid. "I need to take this." "Want me to stay?" The word came out sharp, almost panicked. She answered the call, voice instantly cold and professional. "What do you want, Marcus?" Dylan's stomach dropped. "Wrong, Marcus. I don't care what your lawyers think they found." Serena stood, pacing to the window. "The property records are clear. The house was left to me in probate. Your name isn't on a single document." A pause. Dylan couldn't hear the other end, but he could see the effect it was having. Serena's free hand clenched into a fist. "That's not evidence, that's speculation. And if you think Judge Morrison will—" She stopped. The color drained from her face. "You're lying." Another pause. "When?" Her voice had gone very quiet. Dylan stood slowly, instinct telling him something bad was happening. No, you don't get to—" Serena's hand shook as she pressed it against the window frame. "I'll fight this. I'll fight you on every single claim." Whatever the response was, it made her flinch. "Stay away from this property. I'm documenting this call as harassment." She ended it and stood there, phone pressed to her chest, breathing too fast. "Serena?" She didn't respond, just stared out the window at nothing. Dylan moved closer, careful, like approaching a spooked animal. "What did he say?" "He knows." Her voice was barely a whisper. "About the files. About the house." "He's filing an emergency motion to freeze the estate assets pending further investigation into hidden marital property." Das geht wie. Can he do that? With the right judge? Yes. She turned to face him, and the fear in her eyes was naked and real. If he gets that freeze, I can't sell, can't use the documents, can't do anything until the court resolves the motion, which could take months. And in the meantime, he'll find a way to get access to this place and destroy everything I've been trying to protect. Dylan's jaw tightened. How would he find out? I don't know. Someone talked, or he's having me followed, or... She pressed her palms against her temples. It doesn't matter. What matters is I have 3 weeks now instead of 4, maybe less. Then we work faster. It's not enough time. It'll have to be. Serena lowered her hand, studying his face. Why are you helping me? The question caught him off guard. You're paying me. That's not why. Dylan thought about lying, about keeping it simple and professional. Instead, he heard himself say, because I know what it's like when someone powerful tries to take everything from you. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Your ex-wife, ex-fiancée, Maya's mom. He looked away, old anger stirring. She left when Maya was 2, decided motherhood wasn't for her. Signed away custody without a fight, but she fights me on everything else. Claims I owe her money, that I manipulated her, that I'm an unfit parent. Files motions every 6 months like clockwork, trying to shake me down. Does she win? Not yet. But she's got family money and better lawyers, and every time she files, I have to scramble to afford representation. He met Serena's eyes again. So yeah, I know what it's like when someone uses the system as a weapon, and I know what it's like to fight alone. Something shifted in her expression, recognition, maybe, kinship. I'm not alone, she said quietly. I have lawyers. Lawyers aren't the same as people who give a damn. Serena opened her mouth, closed it. For a second, she looked very young and very lost. Then her phone buzzed with a text, and the armor came back. I need to make some calls. She moved past him toward the stairs. Start on the east wing wiring. I'll handle this. Serena, please. She stopped at the bottom step, not looking back. Just let me handle this part. Dylan watched her climb the stairs, shoulders straight despite everything, and felt something in his chest twist sideways. He picked up his toolbox and got to work. But an hour later, when he heard her voice crack through the ceiling, furious and desperate and trying so hard not to break, he stopped pretending he was just here for the money. The afternoon brought Marcus, his Marcus, the reliable one, and the foundation work started in earnest. Marcus took one look at the crawl space, whistled low, and got to business without asking a single question about why they were rushing or who owned the place. Dylan worked upstairs, pulling wire and trying not to listen to Serena's endless phone calls. But sound carried in old houses, and her conversations bled through the walls whether he wanted to hear them or not. Don't care if it's irregular, file the counter motion today. Need those depositions expedited. I don't care what it costs. Tell Morrison's clerk this is harassment, pure and simple. Around 3 p.m., the calls stopped. Dylan was replacing an outlet in the second-floor hallway when he heard footsteps. Serena appeared at the top of the stairs, phone dark in her hand, looking like she'd aged 5 years since morning. He got the freeze, she said flatly. Judge Morrison signed the emergency order an hour ago. All estate assets locked pending investigation. Dylan set down his wire strippers. What does that mean? It means I can't sell, can't transfer title, can't access the documents without a court order. She leaned against the wall like she needed it to stay upright. And my ex's lawyers are already pushing for a site inspection. They'll be here in 72 hours to verify the property's condition and contents. 72 hours. Less now. They'll find everything. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, knees pulled up, phone dangling from one hand. I lose the evidence. I lose the case. I lose the case. I lose the company. And he wins. Again. Dylan had never seen her like this. Defeated, small, the fight gone out of her. It was worse than the fear. Fear meant she was still in the game. So we moved the files. She looked up. What? We've got 3 days. We move the boxes somewhere he can't find them. Let his lawyers inspect an empty crawl space. Dylan crouched down to her level. They can't seize what isn't here. That's obstruction. That's preservation of evidence. You're protecting documents relevant to an ongoing legal matter. He was making this up as he went, but it sounded good enough. Where's the crime? Serena stared at him. You're suggesting I hide evidence from a court-ordered inspection. I'm suggesting you store sensitive legal documents in a secure location while the property undergoes repairs. He met her eyes. Totally different thing. A sound escaped her that might have been a laugh or might have been something breaking. You realize this could destroy both of us if it goes wrong. Seems like doing nothing will definitely destroy you. Gates. And you're willing to risk your license, your business, your custody of Maya. Her voice caught on his daughter's name. All of that for someone you met 3 weeks ago? Dylan thought about it, really thought about it. Yeah, he said. I am. Serena's eyes shone with something that might have been tears, but she blinked them back hard. Why? Because sometimes the right thing is risky, and because he stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence without saying too much. Because what? Because I'm tired of watching people like your ex win. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was true enough. Serena studied his face for a long moment, then she nodded, once, sharp and decisive. Okay, we move them tonight. Dylan stood and offered his hand. She took it, and he pulled her to her feet. Her hand was small and cold and shaking slightly. She didn't let go right away. Thank you, she said quietly. Thank me when we pull this off. This time she did smile, small and fleeting but real. Then she pulled her hand back, straightened her blazer, and became Serena Vale, CEO, all over again. I'll arrange for a storage facility. You'll need a truck. I've got a truck. A different truck. Rented. Untraceable. She was already moving, thinking 3 steps ahead again. We load after dark, move the boxes in stages, nothing that looks suspicious. Marcus. Can we trust him? Yeah, but the less he knows, the better, boy. Agreed, send him home at 5. We start at midnight. Dylan checked his watch. That gives us 9 hours. Then we'd better make them count. She disappeared down the stairs, phone already pressed to her ear, setting things in motion. Dylan stood in the hallway, hand still warm from where she'd held it, and wondered what the hell he was doing. Then he grabbed his tools and got back to work. They had 9 hours. Marcus left at 5, cheerful and oblivious. Dylan told him to take the weekend off. They'd pick up again Monday. Marcus shrugged, pocketed his cash, and drove away in his beat-up Ford, none the wiser. The house felt different once he was gone, quieter, heavier, like it knew what was coming. Dylan found Serena in the dining room, laptop open, typing furiously. She'd changed into jeans and a dark sweater, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger like this, more human. Rental truck will be here at 11, she said without looking up. Registered to a shell company, paid in cash through a third party. Can't be traced back to either of us. You've done this before. I've spent 18 months learning how my ex operates. You pick up tricks. She hit a final key and closed the laptop. Storage unit is 40 minutes away. Different county, paid for 6 months in advance under an alias. You have an alias? I have 3. Perks of paranoia. She stood, rolling her shoulders like a fighter getting ready for a match. We should eat something. It's going to be a long night. They ordered Chinese food from a place in town that delivered, eating straight from the containers while sitting on the floor of the gutted kitchen. It felt strangely normal, just 2 people sharing fried rice and talking about nothing important while the sun set outside. Maya's school called yesterday, Dylan said between bites of orange chicken. Tuition's due end of month. Serena paused, chopsticks halfway to her mouth. Will you make it? If you pay me on schedule, yeah. I'll pay you tomorrow. Half up front was the deal, but I'll give you 3/4. Consider it hazard pay. Dylan looked at her. You don't have to. I'm asking you to risk everything tonight. Money's the least I can do. She set down her container. Tell me about her. Maya, Why? Because if this goes sideways, I want to know who I'm hurting. Dylan was quiet for a moment. She's smart, smarter than me by a long shot, wants to be a marine biologist. Even though we live 3 hours from the ocean. Loves sharks, hates injustice, Argues like a lawyer when she thinks something's unfair. Sounds like she takes after you. Nah, she's better than me. Braver. He smiled despite everything. Last year, a kid at school was getting bullied. Maya organized this whole campaign, got other kids to sit with him at lunch, walk with him in the halls. Principal called me in, thought she was causing trouble. Turns out she was solving it. Serena's expression softened. She sounds remarkable. She is. Dylan's chest tightened. Which is why, if this goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, then I take full responsibility. I'll tell them you were just the contractor, you didn't know anything about the files. Her voice was firm. I protect you and Maya. That's the deal. That's not how legal liability works. I have better lawyers. Let me worry about it. She stood, collecting the empty containers. Truck arrives in 2 hours. We should start mapping out the logistics. They spent the next 90 minutes planning like they were coordinating a heist. Routes, timing, backup plans. Serena had a whiteboard that she'd apparently been using for case strategy, and she repurposed it for their operation, drawing diagrams and timelines with the same focused intensity she brought to everything else. Dylan watched her work and felt something dangerous start to take root in his chest. Attraction was easy enough to explain. She was striking, all sharp edges and hidden depths. But this was different. This was admiration mixed with protectiveness, mixed with something he didn't have a name for yet. He pushed it down and focused on the plan. The truck arrived at 11:03, idling in the driveway like a promise and a threat. Dylan did a quick inspection while Serena handled the paperwork. Then they backed it up to the side entrance and got to work. The boxes were heavier than they looked. Dylan carried them up from the crawl space 2 at a time, while Serena logged each one on her laptop, tracking contents and creating a digital inventory. They worked in near silence, broken only by the shuffle of cardboard and the occasional grunt of effort. Around 1 a.m., Dylan's back started screaming. He set down a box and straightened slowly, pressing his knuckles into his spine. "Break," Serena said, appearing beside him with water bottles. 5 minutes. They sat on the truck's loading ramp, legs dangling, drinking water and not talking. The night was cold and clear, stars sharp overhead. In the distance, Dylan could hear highway traffic and the lonely sound of a train whistle. "I used to come here as a kid," Serena said suddenly. "Summers when my parents needed me out of their hair. My grandmother would let me run wild, exploring the woods, climbing trees, making forts in the attic." Dylan glanced at her. "Sounds nice?" It was. She was the only person who never expected me to be someone I wasn't. Serena's voice went soft. "When she died, I thought about selling this place immediately. Too many memories. But then the legal trouble started, and I realized she left me this house for a reason. Like she knew I'd need somewhere to hide when everything fell apart. Smart woman. The smartest." Serena smiled, sad and distant. "She warned me about him, you know, my ex. Said he had ambition but no character. I didn't listen. We never do, when we're in it." She looked at him. "Your ex-fiancé. When did you know?" Dylan thought back to those final months before Maya was born. The distance, the resentment, the way she'd look at him like he'd trapped her. When Maya arrived and she wouldn't hold her, he said quietly, just turned away like the baby was someone else's problem. I knew then. Took me another year to admit it, but I knew. I'm sorry. Don't be. Got Maya out of it. That's enough. Serena nodded slowly. My ex proposed on our third date. Huge production, hired a photographer, posted it all over social media before I'd even said yes. I should have seen the red flag. He wasn't asking me, he was performing for an audience. But I was flattered, stupid and flattered. You were young. I was 24 and desperate to prove I could build something that mattered. He seemed like the perfect partner. She laughed bitterly. Turns out he was, just not the kind I needed. They sat there in the cold, two people carrying different versions of the same scars. Break's over, Serena said finally. Let's finish this. They loaded the last boxes at 3:17 a.m. Muscles screaming, hands scraped raw. Dylan secured the truck's rear door while Serena did one final check of the crawlspace, making sure they hadn't left any evidence behind. "Clear," she called up. "Then let's go." They drove in convoy, Serena following in her sedan while Dylan piloted the truck through empty highways and back roads. The storage facility was exactly where she'd said it would be. A squat concrete building surrounded by chain-link fence, security cameras tracking their approach. Serena had a key card. The gate rolled open silently. They unloaded into Unit 247, stacking boxes in careful rows, recreating the organization from the crawl space. Dylan's shoulders were on fire by the time they finished, and Serena was moving like every muscle hurt, but they got it done. 4:30 a.m. The sky was starting to gray at the edges. "That's everything," Serena said, locking the unit. "No trail, no connection to either of us. If his lawyers search the house, they'll find a crawl space full of dust." Dylan leaned against the truck, exhausted. "What happens when they report back that there's nothing there?" "He'll claim I moved evidence. I'll claim there was no evidence to move. It becomes a he said, she said, and without proof, the freeze loses justification." She smiled grimly. "His lawyers will push harder, but I've bought time, and time is what I need." "To do what?" "Build my case. Find the right prosecutor. Make sure when I finally use those files, they land like a bomb instead of a firecracker." She looked at the storage unit, at everything they'd just hidden. "This was always going to be a long fight. I just needed to survive the opening rounds." Dylan straightened, ignoring his protesting back. "So what now?" "Now we return the truck, go back to the house, and pretend tonight never happened." Serena met his eyes. "Think you can do that?" "Yeah, I've been pretending not to know things my whole life. One more secret won't kill me." Something flickered in her expression. Gratitude or regret or both. "Dylan, don't." He shook his head. "Whatever you're about to say, don't. We did this because it needed doing. That's enough." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. They drove back separately, dawn breaking pink and gold over the hills. Neither of them speaking about what they'd just done, or what it meant, or how much further they were both willing to go. Dylan returned the truck to the rental lot, left the keys in the drop box, and met Serena back at the house. She looked pale and shaky in the early light. "You should sleep," he said. "So should you. I've got Maya this weekend. No rest for single parents." "Right." Serena wrapped her arms around herself. "Thank you for tonight, for—" She stopped, words failing. "Get some sleep," Dylan said gently. "We'll finish this, but not if you collapse first." She nodded and turned toward the house. At the door, she paused. "Dylan? Yeah? Whatever happens from here, I meant what I said. If this goes wrong, I protect you and Maya. No matter what." He believed her. "Same goes for you," he said. "We're in this together now." Serena smiled, small and real, and disappeared inside. Dylan drove home as the sun climbed higher, radio playing soft and low, thinking about gray eyes and dangerous choices and the way his hand still felt warm where she'd held it. Maya was awake when he got home, making toast and humming off key. She looked up when he entered, eyes bright. "Dad, you're home. Can we go to the aquarium today?" Dylan's exhaustion evaporated at her smile. "Yeah, kiddo. We can go to the aquarium." "Ooh." "Come." "Yes." She bounced over and hugged him hard. "You smell like dirt." "It's called honest work. It's called you need a shower." He laughed and kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, strawberry, always strawberry, and felt the weight of the night start to lift. This was what mattered. This kid, this life, this moment. Everything else was just noise. But later, standing under hot water while Maya sang in the kitchen, Dylan thought about Serena sleeping alone in that falling apart house, fighting battles no one should have to fight alone. And he knew that whatever came next, he wasn't walking away. Not from the job, not from her. Not anymore. The weekend passed in a blur of aquarium visits and pizza dinners and Maya's endless questions about sharks. Dylan tried to focus on being present, being dad, but his mind kept drifting back to storage unit 247 and the woman who'd trusted him with everything. Monday morning arrived too fast. Dylan dropped Maya at school and headed back to the Victorian. Marcus's truck already in the driveway when he pulled up. Serena was waiting on the porch, professional mask back in place, but there were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before. His lawyers came Saturday, she said without preamble, inspected the whole house, found nothing. And they're furious, filed a motion claiming I destroyed evidence. My lawyers filed a counter motion claiming there was no evidence to destroy. Judge Morrison is reviewing both, decision pending. She looked tired but steady. We bought time. How much? 2 weeks, maybe 3, enough to finish the repairs and get the inspection scheduled. She glanced at Marcus, who was unloading equipment. After that, we'll see. Dylan wanted to ask what happened after that. Wanted to know if there was an after for them, or if this was just a temporary alliance born of desperation. Instead, he picked up his toolbox and got to work. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of Dylan's career. Working 12-hour days, racing against deadlines both legal and structural, trying to bring a dying house back to life, while Serena fought her wars on the phone and through the courts. But slowly, painfully, expensively, exhaustingly, they made progress. Marcus shored up the foundation. Dylan rewired the second floor. Together, they replaced rotted joists and cracked beams and every piece of failing infrastructure they could find. And through it all, Serena was there, watching, worrying, occasionally helping when Dylan needed an extra pair of hands. They fell into a rhythm that felt almost comfortable, almost normal, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. On the 13th day, Dylan was installing the last outlet in the east wing when Serena appeared in the doorway, phone in hand, face unreadable. "The judge ruled," she said. Dylan set down his tools slowly. "And?" Morrison denied my ex's motion, said without concrete evidence of destruction, he can't justify extending the freeze. Her voice shook slightly. "The assets are unfrozen. The house is mine again." Relief flooded through him. "That's good. That's really good. It's temporary. He'll appeal, find another angle." But she was smiling, actually smiling. "But for now, we won." Dylan crossed the room and pulled her into a hug before he could think better of it. She stiffened for half a second, then melted into him, hands clutching at his shirt, face pressed against his shoulder. She was shaking. "We won," she whispered again, like she couldn't quite believe it. "You won! I just carried some boxes." She pulled back enough to look at him, and her eyes were bright. "You did more than that." They stood there, close enough that he could count her freckles, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her gray eyes, close enough to make a mistake. Dylan stepped back, clearing his throat. "Inspection's Friday. We should make sure everything's ready." The moment broke. Serena nodded, professional distance sliding back into place. "Right. Of course." She straightened her blazer. "I'll do a final walkthrough tomorrow." "Sounds good?" She left without looking back, and Dylan stood alone in the almost finished room, heart still pounding, wondering when exactly he'd stopped being just the contractor, and what the hell he was going to do about it. The inspection was scheduled for 10 a.m. Friday, which gave them 3 days to polish every surface and pray the inspector didn't look too closely at the shortcuts they'd had to take. Dylan arrived Wednesday morning to find Serena already there, dressed in work clothes he'd never seen before, faded jeans and an old sweater that looked like it might have belonged to her grandmother. Her hair was down, messy, and she had a smudge of dirt on her cheek. She was scrubbing the kitchen floor on her hands and knees. "What are you doing?" She looked up, startled, making sure everything looks presentable. "You're the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. You have people for this." "Yes. I can't have people here. We've been through this." She went back to scrubbing. "Besides, it's my house. My problem." Dylan set down his toolbox and crouched beside her. Down his. "It's also a waste of your time. You should be prepping for the legal stuff. I can do both." "Serena, I need to do this." Her voice cracked slightly. "I need to do something with my hands that isn't typing or calling lawyers or fighting. Just let me clean my grandmother's floor." Dylan understood that, the need to fix something tangible when everything else felt broken. "Okay," he said. "But you're doing it wrong." She blinked. "Excuse me?" He took the brush from her hand. "Too much pressure. You're going to wear through the finish, light circles like this." He demonstrated, and she watched with an expression caught between irritation and amusement. You're seriously critiquing my cleaning technique? Someone has to. Can't have the inspector seeing scrub marks. Bullshit. Okay. That's not a real thing. It absolutely is. She stared at him for a moment, then laughed. A real laugh, surprised out of her. You're ridiculous. I'm thorough. There's a difference. Serena shook her head, but she was smiling. Fine. Show me how to properly clean a floor. They spent the next hour working side by side, scrubbing away years of neglect while Marcus handled the final electrical checks upstairs. It was domestic in a way that made Dylan's chest ache. Easy conversation, shared work, the comfortable silence of two people who'd learned each other's rhythms. Around noon, Maya called. Dad, can Jessie sleep over Friday? Her mom said it's okay if you say yes. Dylan wiped his hands on his jeans. This Friday? Oh. Yeah, please. We're working on a science project and we really need the time. He glanced at Serena, who was pretending not to listen. Let me check my schedule, kiddo. I'll call you back. That means yes, right? That means I'll call you back. Maya groaned dramatically and hung up. Serena was watching him when he pocketed the phone. You should say yes. I don't want to leave you alone Friday. Not with the inspection. Dylan, I'll be fine. Will you? The question hung there. They both knew the answer. The inspection's at 10, Serena said quietly. You could drop Maya at school, come here for moral support, then leave for the sleepover pickup. It's not that complicated. And if something goes wrong, then I handle it. I've been handling things alone for a long time. You don't have to anymore. The words came out before he could stop them, raw and honest and way too revealing. Serena went very still. What are we doing here? Ushi? 1. Cleaning a floor. Dylan. He set down the brush and met her eyes. I don't know, but I know I'm not ready to walk away when this is done. The house will be finished. The inspection will pass or it won't. Either way, you'll have no reason to keep coming back. Maybe I'll find one. Serena's breath caught. This is complicated. Yeah, it's shit. I'm still fighting a divorce. My ex is actively trying to destroy my life. I'm barely holding my company together. She stopped, looking away. I'm a mess, Dylan. You don't want this. Pretty sure I get to decide what I want. And what about Maya? You'd really risk dragging her into this circus? Oh, that landed hard. Dylan sat back on his heels, thinking about his daughter's bright smile and trusting eyes, about all the times he'd promised her stability, safety, a life that wasn't chaotic. You're right, he said. That's not fair to her. Relief and something that looked like disappointment crossed Serena's face. So we finished the job, and then we're done. Yeah, we're done. They went back to cleaning in silence, the easy comfort from earlier gone sour. But when Dylan left that evening, he saw Serena watching from the window, and the look on her face wasn't relief. It was regret. Thursday brought unexpected problems. The building inspector's office called to say their original inspector had called in sick, and they were sending a replacement, someone Serena didn't know, which meant someone she couldn't predict. This is bad, she told Dylan over the phone, voice tight with stress. I'd researched Inspector Chen. I knew what he'd look for, what he'd overlook. This new guy, Ramirez, he's got a reputation for being thorough. Thorough's not necessarily bad. It is when you've cut corners to meet an impossible deadline. Dylan couldn't argue with that. They'd done good work, but they'd done it fast. Too fast for perfection. We'll handle it, he said, more confidently than he felt. House is solid. Foundation's sound. Wiring's up to code. That's what matters. And if he finds something we missed, then we fix it and reschedule. It's not the end of the world. Serena was quiet for a long moment. For you, maybe. For me, every delay is another chance for my ex to file another motion, freeze another asset, make another play. R.E. Serena's. I'm sorry. I know you're doing everything you can. She exhaled shakily. I'm scared, Dylan. I'm really scared. He wanted to drive over there. He wanted to drive Wanted to hold her like he had after the judge's ruling, tell her it would be okay, even if he wasn't sure it would be. Instead, he said, "Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we show Ramirez a house that's safe and solid and ready to pass. And then you can move forward with whatever comes next." "Okay." Her voice was small. "Okay, Sets. I'll see you in the morning." "Dylan?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for everything." He held the phone after she hung up, Maya's laughter drifting from her bedroom where she was video chatting with Jesse about their sleepover plans, and felt the weight of being torn between two people who both needed him. He told Serena they were done after the inspection, but sitting there in his quiet living room, he knew that was a lie. Friday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of weather that felt like a bad omen. Dylan dropped Maya at school early, endured her excited chatter about the sleepover, and promised to pick her up at 3. "And you'll remember to bring my overnight bag? Already packed and in the truck. And you'll text Jesse's mom our address in case she needs to reach you?" "Already sent it." Maya hugged him hard. "You're the best dad. You're the best kid, obviously." She grinned and ran toward the school entrance, backpack bouncing. Dylan watched until she disappeared inside, then drove to the Victorian with his stomach in knots. Serena's car was already there, along with an unfamiliar white sedan bearing official inspection plates. Dylan cursed under his breath and parked quickly. He found them in the kitchen, Serena in a blazer and heels again, all business, standing beside a stocky man in his 50s with a clipboard and a serious expression. "Mr. Cross." Serena's voice was professionally neutral. "This is Inspector Ramirez. He was just starting the structural assessment." Ramirez nodded at Dylan. "You did the repairs?" "Most of them, yes, sir. Foundation work was a partner, but I supervised." "Let's see what we're working with." The next 2 hours were excruciating. Ramirez moved through the house with methodical precision, testing outlets, checking load-bearing beams, inspecting every joint and junction with the focus of a surgeon. He asked questions Dylan answered honestly, made notes Dylan couldn't read, and gave away nothing with his expression. Serena followed silently, hands clasped behind her back, face carefully blank. But Dylan could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her breathing went shallow when Ramirez lingered too long on any one area. They were in the second-floor hallway when Ramirez paused at the spot where Dylan had found the crawlspace entrance, the one they'd patched after moving the files. "This repair looks recent." Dylan's heart kicked against his ribs. "Yes, sir. Found some water damage in the subfloor. Had to replace the boards and seal the crawlspace access." Ramirez knelt down, running his hand over the seam. "Access to what?" "Dead space between floors, common in houses this age. Nothing structural. Mind if I take a look?" Every muscle in Dylan's body went tight. "It's sealed for moisture control. Opening it would compromise—" "I understand, but I need to verify there's no mold or pest infestation." Ramirez looked up at Serena. "Ma'am, do you have any objection?" Serena's face had gone pale, but her voice stayed steady. "Of course not. Whatever you need to complete your inspection." Dylan wanted to grab her, shake her, ask what the hell she was thinking. But he just stepped back and let Ramirez pry up the boards he'd so carefully sealed. The inspector aimed his flashlight into the dark space below. Dylan held his breath. Ramirez shifted the beam slowly across the empty crawl space, then straightened. "Looks clean. No moisture, no pests. Good work on the seal." Relief hit Dylan so hard he felt dizzy. "Thank you," Serena said, voice barely steady. Ramirez replaced the boards and made another note. "Let's check the foundation next." They made it through the rest of the inspection without incident. Ramirez tested the electrical panel, verified the load calculations, inspected the emergency exits. He was thorough but fair, and when they finally ended up back in the kitchen, Dylan allowed himself a sliver of hope. Ramirez flipped through his notes, then looked at Serena. "The property meets current safety codes for residential occupancy. I'll file the approval paperwork this afternoon." The air left Serena's lungs in a rush. "It passed?" "It passed. You've got a solid house here, Ms. Vale. Whoever did the restoration knew what they were doing." "Thank you." She was smiling, actually smiling, and it transformed her face. "Thank you so much." Ramirez nodded and packed up his equipment. Dylan walked him out, shook his hand, watched him drive away. When he came back inside, Serena was standing in the middle of the kitchen, hands pressed to her mouth, shaking. "Hey." Dylan crossed to her quickly. "It's okay. We passed. It's over." "I know, She lowered her hands, and her eyes were wet. "I really thought we'd fail. I thought he'd find something, and everything would fall apart again, and I'd lose." She stopped, but Dylan heard the rest of that sentence anyway. "You didn't lose," he said gently. "You won. The house is yours. Legally and officially, your ex can't touch it now." Serena nodded, swiping at her eyes. "I'm being ridiculous." "You're being human," she laughed, shaky and raw. "I forgot what that felt like." They stood there in the kitchen that they'd scrubbed together, in the house they'd saved together, and Dylan knew he was about to make a choice he couldn't take back. "Serena." His phone rang. Maya's school. Dread dropped into his stomach like a stone. "I have to take this," he answered. "Hello, Mr. Cross, this is Principal Chen. There's been an incident with Maya. Is she hurt?" No, she's fine. But there was an altercation with another student, and we need you to come in immediately." Dylan checked his watch. 1:30. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and turned to find Serena watching him with concern. "Everything okay?" "Maya's in trouble at school. I have to go." "Of course. Go." He hesitated at the door. "Tonight, the sleepover. Dylan, your daughter comes first, always." Her voice was firm. "We'll talk later. Just take care of her." He nodded and left, but driving away felt like tearing something open. Maya was sitting in the principal's office with her arms crossed and a defiant expression that reminded Dylan painfully of himself at that age. There was a red mark on her cheek that was going to bruise. "What happened?" Principal Chen gestured to the chair beside Maya. "There was a fight during lunch. Maya and another student, Tyler Morrison, got into a physical altercation." Dylan looked at his daughter. "You hit someone?" "He hit me first." "That's not what the lunch monitor reported," Chen said. "According to witnesses, Maya initiated the confrontation." "Because he was being a jerk," Maya's voice cracked. "He was saying stuff about you, Dad. About how you're just a poor contractor and his dad could buy our whole house, and I told him to shut up, and he pushed me, so I pushed back, and then he hit me, so I hit him harder." Dylan's jaw tightened. "Tyler Morrison, as in Judge Morrison's kid?" Chen shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, his father has already called, demanding disciplinary action." Of course he had. Morrison, the same judge who'd frozen Serena's assets at her ex's request. The same judge who probably had friends in the same circles as Serena's ex. And what disciplinary action is Tyler facing? That's being discussed. "So my daughter gets punished for defending herself while the judge's kid gets discussed." Dylan kept his voice level, but barely. "That about right?" "Mr. Cross, I understand your frustration, but Maya did escalate the situation after being physically assaulted. The lunch monitor's report indicates I don't care what the report indicates." Dylan stood, putting a hand on Maya's shoulder. "My daughter was attacked. She defended herself. If you want to punish her for that, fine. But we both know this is about politics, not policy." Chen's expression tightened. "I'm going to recommend a 3-day suspension for both students." "Of course you are." Dylan helped Maya to her feet. "Come on, kiddo. Let's go home." They walked out together, Maya's hand tight in his, and Dylan tried to swallow the rage burning in his throat. In the truck, Maya finally spoke. "I'm sorry, Dad." "For what? Defending yourself?" "For getting suspended, for making trouble." Her voice wobbled. "Tyler said you were poor and pathetic, and I couldn't let him say that stuff about you." Dylan's heart cracked. "Maya, listen to me. I don't care what Tyler Morrison or his father or anyone else thinks about me, but I care that you got hurt trying to defend my honor. You don't have to do that." "But he was wrong. You're not pathetic. You work really hard and you're a good dad and—" She stopped, tears spilling over. "Why do people have to be so mean?" Dylan pulled over, put the truck in park, and pulled his daughter into a hug. She clung to him and cried. and he held her and wished he could protect her from every cruel word and unfair system. Some people are mean because they're scared, he said quietly. And some people are mean because they've got power and they don't know how to use it right. But you're better than all of them. You hear me? Maya nodded against his shoulder. And you're suspended for 3 days, which means you're grounded for 2 of them. The 3rd day, we're going to the aquarium. She pulled back, eyes wide. Really? Really. But first, you're writing Tyler Morrison an apology. Dad, not because you were wrong, because sometimes we apologize to end the fight, not to admit fault. It's called strategy. He wiped her tears, and then we're never thinking about him again. Maya considered this, then nodded. Okay. They drove home, and Dylan tried not to think about how one judge had screwed over both the women in his life today. That evening, after Maya was asleep and the house was quiet, Dylan sat on the porch with a beer and his phone, staring at Serena's number. He wanted to call her, wanted to hear her voice, wanted to tell her about Morrison and Maya and the way the world kept kicking people who were just trying to survive. Instead, he typed out a text. House passed inspection. Congrats. You did it. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. We did it. Thank you for everything. Dylan stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. There were 1,000 things he wanted to say. About the way she looked when she laughed. About the space she'd carved out in his life without him noticing. About wanting more than a professional goodbye. Instead, he typed, take care of yourself. You too. He set the phone down and finished his beer, watching stars appear in the darkening sky, and tried to convince himself this was the right ending. It didn't work. The next morning, Dylan woke to 7 missed calls from a number he didn't recognize. He was still groggy, Maya's sleepover bag packed and waiting by the door, when his phone rang again. Hello? Mr. Cross? This is Jennifer Park. I'm an attorney representing Serena Vale. Dylan sat up fast. What happened? Is she okay? Physically, yes. Legally, we have a situation. Park's voice was crisp, professional. Ms. Vale's ex-husband showed up at the Victorian property last night with a camera crew. He's claiming she's been conducting illegal renovations, hiding assets, and obstructing justice. The footage is all over social media. He what? It gets worse. He's also claiming you've been complicit, that you helped her conceal evidence and falsify inspection records. Your contractor's license is being investigated. The world tilted sideways. That's insane. The inspection was clean. Ramirez signed off on everything. I believe you, but perception matters, and right now, the narrative is that Serena Vale used her wealth and connections to manipulate a struggling contractor into breaking the law. Park paused. There's going to be a press conference today. Serena's ex and his lawyers are going to publicly accuse her of fraud. Where's Serena? Preparing a response. But Mr. Cross, she's going to distance herself from you, publicly. It's the only way to protect you from the legal fallout. I don't need protecting. Your daughter might disagree. That hit like a gut punch. Dylan thought about Maya, suspended and bruised and already dealing with enough. About custody battles and licensing boards and all the ways this could destroy everything he'd built. What do I need to do? Stay quiet. Don't speak to the press. Don't defend Serena. Don't attack her ex. Just be invisible until this blows over. And Serena? She's a survivor. She'll manage. Park hung up, and Dylan sat there in his quiet house, phone in hand, feeling like the ground had opened beneath him. He thought about calling Serena, demanding to know the plan, refusing to let her face this alone. But Maya called from her room, Dad, are we still going to Jesse's? And he remembered what mattered most. Yeah, kiddo, we're still going. He got Maya to Jesse's house by noon, hugged her tight, promised to pick her up Sunday morning. Jesse's mom gave him a sympathetic look that suggested she'd seen the social media posts, but she didn't ask questions. Dylan drove home with the radio off, mind racing. At a red light, he pulled up his phone and searched Serena's name. The video was everywhere. Serena's ex, a polished man in an expensive suit that Dylan immediately wanted to put his fist through, standing in front of the Victorian, talking about corruption and conspiracy and his poor manipulated ex-wife who'd lost her way. Serena Vale used her position and wealth to coerce a struggling contractor into illegal activity, the ex said, voice dripping with false concern. She hid evidence, falsified documents, and when caught, she blamed everyone but herself. This is who's running Vale Enterprises. This is who the city trusts with development contracts. The camera panned to show the house. Dylan's work, their work, framed like a crime scene. Dylan's hands tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. Behind him, someone honked. The light had turned green. He drove home on autopilot, parked in his driveway, and sat there trying to figure out what the hell to do next. His phone rang. Unknown number again. He almost didn't answer. Dylan Cross? Who's asking? Marcus Hale, Ridgemont Tribune. I'm doing a story on the Vale situation, and I'd love to get your perspective. Dylan hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. He turned it off. Inside, the house felt too empty. Dylan paced the living room, energy buzzing under his skin with nowhere to go. He wanted to fight, wanted to drive to wherever Serena's ex was holding court and tell the truth, loud and public and undeniable. But Jennifer Park's words echoed in his head. Your daughter might disagree. Maya didn't ask for this. Didn't deserve to have her life upended because her father couldn't walk away from a complicated woman and a dangerous situation. Dylan grabbed his keys. He was halfway to the Victorian before he admitted that's where he'd been heading all along. The driveway was empty when he arrived. No Serena, no lawyers, no cameras. Just the house, standing quiet against the gray sky, looking almost peaceful. Dylan let himself in with the keys Serena had given him weeks ago. The interior was still, all their work evident in the clean lines and solid structure, but empty of life. He walked through rooms they'd repaired together, remembering conversations and arguments and the slow accumulation of trust. He found Serena in her grandmother's old bedroom on the second floor, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, still in her press conference clothes, but rumpled now, makeup smudged. She looked up when he entered, eyes red. You shouldn't be here. Probably not. The press, if they see your truck, I parked down the road. Serena laughed, a broken sound. Of course you did. Dylan sat down beside her, their shoulders touching. Saw the video. Yeah, it's everywhere. She pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. He's good at this. Always has been. Makes himself the victim, makes me the villain. And people believe him because he's charming, and I'm, what? Cold, difficult, a bitch who had it coming. She rested her forehead on her knees. Maybe they're right. They're not. You don't know that. I know you spent 6 weeks fighting for what's yours. I know you worked yourself to exhaustion, trying to make things right. I know... He stopped, searching for the right words. I know you're one of the bravest people I've ever met. Serena turned her head to look at him, cheeks still pressed to her knees. I'm about to throw you under the bus to save myself. That's not brave. That's survival. Jennifer Park told me. And you came anyway? Yeah. Why? Dylan thought about all the careful, reasonable answers. About protecting his license and reputation. About doing the right thing professionally. Because you shouldn't be alone right now. Yes. Serena's eyes filled with tears. I'm going to hurt you. The press conference is in 3 hours, and I'm going to stand there and imply you acted without my knowledge, that I trusted the wrong person. It's the only way to protect you from criminal charges. I know. And you're okay with that? No, but I understand it. He shifted to face her properly. Do what you need to do. I'll handle whatever comes. Dylan, you've been fighting alone for 18 months. Let me take one hit for you. Just one. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. I don't deserve this. Probably not, but you're getting it anyway. Serena reached out and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. Her palm was warm and calloused from weeks of work, and Dylan realized this might be the last time they touched. After the press conference, she said quietly, we can't see each other. Not for a while. Maybe not ever. It'll be too complicated, too public. People will twist it into something ugly. I know. So this is goodbye. Dylan squeezed her hand. Yeah, this is goodbye. They sat there on the floor of her grandmother's bedroom, holding hands like teenagers, and Dylan memorized everything. The way her hair fell across her shoulder, the exact shade of gray in her eyes, the small scar on her knuckle from the time she'd cut herself on a wire casing. I would have liked to see where this went, Serena whispered. In another life, one where my ex wasn't a vindictive bastard and you didn't have a daughter to protect. Me too, say. She turned to face him fully, and the look in her eyes made Dylan's chest ache. Thank you for everything, for trusting me when you shouldn't have, for staying when it got hard, for, her voice broke, for making me remember what it feels like to not be alone. Dylan reached up and brushed the tear from her cheek with his thumb. You're going to be okay. You're going to win this fight and rebuild your company and prove everyone wrong. I know you will. How? Because you're Serena Vale, and you don't quit. She laughed through her tears. I'm about to publicly betray the one person who stood by me. That feels like quitting. That's strategy. There's a difference. Serena leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his. I'm so sorry. Don't be. I knew what I was signing up for. Did you? No, but I'd do it again anyway. They stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads touching, breathing the same air, the space between them charged with everything they couldn't say. Then Serena pulled back. You should go, before someone sees. Dylan stood, helping her up. At the door, he paused. The press conference, I'll watch, so you're not doing it completely alone. Dylan, I'll be watching, he repeated. Remember that. She nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. He left before he could change his mind, driving home with his hands shaking and his heart in pieces. The press conference started at 4 p.m. Dylan watched it on his laptop, sitting at his kitchen table with a beer he wasn't drinking. Serena stood at a podium in front of Vale Enterprises headquarters, flanked by lawyers looking every inch the CEO she was supposed to be. Her hair was perfect, her suit impeccable, her expression controlled. I'd like to address the allegations made by my ex-husband regarding the renovations at my grandmother's property, she began, voice steady. The claims are misleading at best and malicious at worst. She outlined the timeline, the house, the inspection, the legal battles. She acknowledged hiring Dylan Cross for repairs, framing it as a straightforward business transaction. And then she said the words that Dylan had known were coming, but still felt like a knife. However, it's come to my attention that Mr. Cross may have taken certain liberties with the renovation process, shortcuts and decisions made without my knowledge or approval. While I trusted him as a professional, that trust appears to have been misplaced. The reporters erupted with questions. Serena fielded them calmly, painting Dylan as an independent contractor who'd made questionable choices, absolving herself while carefully avoiding outright accusations. It was masterful, surgical, exactly what she needed to do. And it hurt like hell anyway. Dylan closed the laptop when it was over and sat in his quiet kitchen, feeling the weight of being publicly disavowed by someone he'd started to care about more than was smart or safe. His phone buzzed. Jennifer Park. She did what she had to do. Don't take it personally. Dylan didn't respond. Another text, this one from Marcus. The reliable one. Saw the news. That's bullshit, man. You good? Yeah, thanks. A third text from a number he didn't recognize. This is Serena. Different phone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You deserved better than that. Dylan stared at the message for a long time. Then he deleted it without responding, because some conversations didn't have good endings. He picked up Maya from Jesse's house Sunday morning and tried to act normal. She chattered about the sleepover, the movies they'd watched, the pizza they'd eaten, the late-night conversation about whether dolphins or sharks were cooler. Definitely sharks, she concluded, because they're survivors. They've been around for millions of years, and they just keep adapting and winning. Dylan smiled despite everything. Smart kid. Yeah. What? Obviously. She looked at him more closely. You okay, Dad? You seem sad. Just tired, kiddo. Is it about the lady? The one with the house? He glanced at her, surprised. How do you know about that? Jesse's mom was watching the news yesterday. I saw the lady on TV. She's pretty. Dylan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Yeah, she is. Did you like her? The question was so direct, so Maya, that Dylan almost laughed. It's complicated. That means yes. Maya was quiet for a moment. She said mean things about you on TV. That's not fair. She had her reasons. Like what? Like sometimes people have to say things they don't mean to protect other people. Maya frowned, processing this. That's dumb. Yeah, but it's also kind of brave. His daughter looked at him like he'd lost his mind, but she dropped it. They spent Sunday doing laundry and homework and trying to pretend the world outside their small house didn't exist. But that night, after Maya went to bed, Dylan sat on the porch and thought about gray eyes and impossible choices and the cost of caring about someone you couldn't have. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mr. Cross? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. This is Detective Sarah Chen with the Ridgemont Police Department. I need to speak with you about your involvement in the Vale property renovations. Dylan's stomach dropped. Am I being charged with something? Not at this time, but we're investigating allegations of evidence tampering and fraud. I'd like you to come in for questioning. When? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Bring a lawyer if you have one. She hung up. Dylan sat there in the dark, the phone heavy in his hand, and realized the storm wasn't over. It was just getting started. Dylan didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every conversation he'd had with Serena, every decision they'd made, trying to figure out where the line between legal and illegal had gotten so blurred he couldn't see it anymore. At 6 a.m., he gave up on sleep and called the only lawyer he knew, Tom Breslin, who'd handled his custody paperwork 3 years ago and owed him a favor from a kitchen remodel. Dylan, it's 6 in the morning. I know, I'm sorry, but I need help. Tom listened while Dylan explained the situation, occasionally interrupting with questions that made Dylan's stomach turn. When he finished, there was a long silence. You moved evidence from a property under legal dispute to avoid a court-ordered inspection, Tom said finally. That's obstruction at minimum, possibly conspiracy, depending on how aggressive the prosecutor wants to be. She was protecting herself from her ex. He was using the courts to destroy her. Doesn't matter. You don't get to decide which court orders are legitimate, Tom sighed. Look, I'll come to the station with you. But Dylan, you need to understand how serious this is. If they charge you, you could lose your license. Lose custody. This isn't a parking ticket. I know. Do you? Because it sounds like you walked into this with your eyes closed. Dylan thought about Serena's face when she talked about her grandmother, about the desperation in her voice when her ex got the asset freeze, about the way she'd held his hand and said goodbye. My eyes were open, he said quietly. I just didn't care. Tom made a sound that might have been sympathy or frustration. I'll meet you at the station at 8:30. Don't talk to anyone before I get there. Don't answer any questions. Don't try to explain yourself. Understood? Understood. Dylan hung up and went to wake Maya. She was still groggy when he explained he had an appointment and she'd be spending the morning with Jesse's mom. She didn't ask questions, just hugged him tight before climbing into the truck. Dad? She said as they pulled into Jesse's driveway. Are you in trouble? He wanted to lie, wanted to tell her everything was fine, nothing to worry about. Maybe, he said instead, but I'm handling it. Because of the pretty lady? Yeah, because of the pretty lady. Maya studied his face with an intensity that reminded him she was growing up faster than he wanted. Was it worth it? The question caught him off guard. What? Helping her, even if you get in trouble. Was it worth it? Dylan thought about that. About the house they'd saved and the evidence they'd hidden and the way Serena had looked at him like he was someone worth trusting. Ask me again when this is over. Maya nodded, like that made sense, kissed his cheek, and climbed out of the truck. Dylan watched her disappear into Jesse's house, then drove to the police station with his heart in his throat. Tom was already waiting outside, briefcase in hand, looking rumpled and concerned. You look like hell. Didn't sleep. Figured, let's get this over with. Detective Sarah Chen turned out to be a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded Dylan uncomfortably of Serena. She led them to an interview room that smelled like stale coffee and showed them to uncomfortable plastic chairs. Mr. Cross, thank you for coming in. She set a recorder on the table between them. I'm going to record this conversation. You understand you're not under arrest and you're free to leave at any time? I understand. Good. Let's start with your relationship to Serena Vale. Tom put a hand on Dylan's arm. My client was hired as a contractor for property repairs. That's the extent of the relationship. Chen's eyebrow lifted slightly. That's not what I'm hearing. Multiple sources suggest the relationship became personal. Define personal, Tom said. Late-night work sessions, meals together, extended conversations that had nothing to do with construction. Chen pulled out a file. We have statements from neighbors who saw Ms. Vale's car at the property overnight. We have phone records showing frequent communication outside business hours. And we have your truck parked at the property last Saturday evening, the same day Ms. Vale gave her press conference distancing herself from you. Dylan's jaw tightened. They'd been watching. Of course they'd been watching. My client's personal life isn't relevant to your investigation, Tom said smoothly. Unless you're suggesting that eating lunch together is a crime? I'm suggesting that Mr. Cross had a vested interest in helping Miss Vale conceal evidence from her ex-husband's legal team. Chen leaned forward. Tell me about the crawl space, Mr. Cross. The one you sealed just before the inspection. It was a routine repair. Water damage to the subfloor. And what was in the crawl space before you sealed it? Dylan glanced at Tom, who gave a small nod. Dead space. Dust. Some old insulation. Nothing else? Nothing else. Chen pulled out a photo and slid it across the table. It showed the crawl space entrance, boards pried up, flashlight beam illuminating the empty space below. Inspector Ramirez took this during his inspection. Notice how clean it is? No dust, no debris, almost like something was removed recently. Dylan kept his expression neutral. I cleaned it out when I did the repairs, standard procedure. Is it standard procedure to rent a truck under a false name at midnight? The question landed like a punch. Dylan felt Tom stiffen beside him. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because we have security footage from Morrison Storage Rentals showing a truck matching the description of your rental leaving the property at 3 a.m. on the night of October 27th. And we have entrance logs from Westfield Storage Solutions showing that same truck entering their facility at 4:15 a.m. Tom's hand tightened on Dylan's arm, a warning to stay quiet. My client isn't answering questions about alleged truck rentals without seeing the evidence you're referencing. Chen pulled out another folder, this one thicker. We also have testimony from Miss Vale's ex-husband claiming that she told him she'd hidden financial documents related to Vale Enterprises. Documents that would prove corporate fraud. Documents that mysteriously disappeared from the property before his lawyers could inspect it. Testimony from a man engaged in a hostile divorce proceeding, Tom countered. Not exactly a credible witness. Perhaps, but combined with the midnight truck rental, the sealed crawl space, and your client's unusually close relationship with Ms. Vale, Chen shrugged. It paints a picture. Dylan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Are you charging my client with something, detective? Tom asked. Because if not, we're done here. Chen studied Dylan for a long moment. Not yet. But I'd advise Mr. Cross not to leave town. This investigation is ongoing. He's a single father with a contracting business. Single? He's not going anywhere. They stood to leave, but Chen stopped them at the door. Mr. Cross? One more thing. She crossed her arms. Serena Vale is smart, connected, and wealthy. When this goes to trial, and it will go to trial, she'll have a team of expensive lawyers protecting her. You'll have Tom here and whatever goodwill you can scrape together. Think about who's going to come out on top of that equation. Dylan met her eyes. Is that a threat? It's advice from someone who's seen this play out before. Chen's expression softened slightly. Help us build a case against Vale, and I can probably convince the DA to offer immunity. You walk away clean. My client isn't interested, Tom said, but Chen was still looking at Dylan. You sure about that? Because from where I'm standing, you're about to take the fall for someone who already threw you under the bus on national television. Dylan thought about Serena's face in her grandmother's bedroom, about the way she'd held his hand and apologized for what she had to do, about the text she'd sent that he'd deleted but still remembered word for word. I'm sure, he said. Chen sighed. Then I'll be seeing you again soon. Outside in the parking lot, Tom grabbed Dylan's arm. What the hell are you thinking? They're offering you a way out. They're asking me to lie about Serena. They're asking you to tell the truth about helping her obstruct justice. She was protecting herself from a corrupt system. That's not a crime. It literally is. Tom scrubbed his hands over his face. Dylan, I know you care about this woman, but she's not worth losing everything over. That's not your call to make. No, but it's my job to tell you when you're being an idiot. And right now, you're being an idiot. Tom's voice gentled. Think about Maya. What happens to her if you go to prison? That hit home. Dylan leaned against his truck, the morning sun too bright, and felt the weight of every choice pressing down on him. I can't do it, he said quietly. I can't betray her. Not after everything. Tom was quiet for a long moment. Then we'd better start building a defense, because this is going to get ugly. Dylan's phone buzzed again. He pulled it out. 3 missed calls from an unknown number and a voicemail. He listened to the message. Mr. Cross, this is Amanda Wells from Channel 7 News. I'm doing a story on the Vail corruption scandal, and I'd love to get your perspective. Please call me back at... He deleted it without listening to the rest. Tom noticed. They're going to keep calling. You need to prepare for that. I know. And you need to tell Maya something before she hears it from someone else. Dylan's chest tightened. She's 10 years old, which means she's old enough to understand when her dad's in trouble. Talk to her tonight. Tom put a hand on Dylan's shoulder. And Dylan, get your financial paperwork in order. If this goes to trial, you're going to need every penny you can scrape together for legal fees. Bitter Suspense. He walked away, leaving Dylan alone in the parking lot with the ruins of his carefully controlled life. Dylan picked up Maya from Jesse's house at noon and took her to their favorite diner, the one with the good milkshakes and the waitress who always remembered Maya liked extra whipped cream. They sat in their usual booth by the window, and Maya ordered a chocolate shake, while Dylan pushed fries around his plate and tried to figure out how to explain that the world was about to get complicated. You're doing the thing, Maya said. What thing? The thing where you're trying to figure out how to tell me something bad without making me worried. She sipped her shake. Just say it, Dad. I can handle it. Dylan set down his fork. Remember the lady with the house, Serena? See, the pretty one who said mean things about you on TV. Yeah, well, some people think I helped her do something illegal. The police are investigating. Maya's eyes widened. Did you? It's complicated. That's not an answer. Dylan looked at his daughter, smart, brave, too perceptive for her own good, and decided she deserved the truth. I helped her protect some important documents from her ex-husband. He was trying to use the legal system to hurt her, and I still think she deserved better. But the way we did it might have broken some rules. Will you go to jail? I don't know, maybe. Maya's face crumpled. Dad, hey. He reached across the table and took her hand. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out. You and me. We always do. But if you go to jail, what happens to me? Do I have to live with Mom? Well, the fear in her voice broke his heart. Your mom signed away custody, remember? You'd stay with Aunt Sarah. That's Ryan, his sister, who lived 2 hours away and had 3 kids of her own. But it's not going to come to that. How do you know? Because I'm going to fight this, and I'm good at fighting. Maya squeezed his hand. Was it worth it? Helping her? There was that question again. Dylan thought about Serena's smile when the inspection passed, about the evidence safely hidden away, waiting to be used for justice, about the way she'd looked at him like he was someone who mattered. Yeah, he said. It was worth it. Maya nodded slowly, processing this. Then I'm on your side, no matter what. Dylan's throat tightened. You're the best kid in the world. You know that? Obviously. She went back to her milkshake, and Dylan watched her and wondered how he'd gotten so lucky and so screwed up all at the same time. That afternoon, the first news van showed up outside their house. Dylan was in the garage pretending to organize tools while actually just trying not to think, when he heard Maya yell from inside. Dad, there's people with cameras. He came out to find a reporter and cameraman setting up on the sidewalk. The reporter, A young guy with 2 white teeth and an aggressive smile waved at Dylan. Mr. Cross, Jeremy Walsh, Channel 7. Can I ask you a few questions about Serena Vale? No. Just a few minutes of your time. Our viewers want to know. I said no. Dylan walked toward them, and something in his expression made Walsh take a step back. You're on public property, so I can't make you leave. But if you film my daughter, if you approach her, if you so much as look at her wrong, we're going to have a problem. Walsh held up his hands. We're just trying to get the truth. The truth is, I have no comment. Now get off my sidewalk. He went back inside, locked the door, and closed all the blinds. Maya was standing in the living room, eyes wide. Are they allowed to do that? Unfortunately. Dylan pulled out his phone. Pack a bag. We're staying at Aunt Sarah's tonight. But school? I'll call them. You can miss a day. He texted his sister while Maya packed, explaining the situation in the vaguest terms possible. Sarah responded immediately. Come now. Room's ready. Love you both. They were out the door 20 minutes later, Dylan loading their bags while the news van filmed from across the street. He flipped them off before he could stop himself, which would probably be on the evening news, but he was too tired to care. The drive to Sarah's took 2 hours. Maya dozed in the passenger seat while Dylan white-knuckled the steering wheel and tried to figure out his next move. His phone rang. Tom, don't answer any calls from numbers you don't recognize. The press is going to hound you. Already figured that out. Good. Also, I talked to a friend in the DA's office. Off the record. Tom paused. They're building a case against Serena. Multiple charges. Fraud, obstruction, corruption. They want her badly. And me? Your leverage. They think if they squeeze you hard enough, you'll flip on her and give them what they need to make the charges stick. Dylan's jaw tightened. Not happening. I told them that. They don't believe me. Tom sighed. Dylan, they're going to come at you with everything. Subpoenas, depositions, threats about Maya's custody. They're going to make your life hell until you cooperate. Then I guess my life's about to get complicated. It already is complicated. This is about to become unbearable. Tom's voice gentled. Last chance. Take the immunity deal. Protect yourself and Maya. And throw Serena to the wolves. She's a grown woman who made her own choices. You don't owe her this. Dylan thought about that. About debt and loyalty and the difference between what you owed someone and what you chose to give them. Maybe not, he said. But I'm doing it anyway. Tom was quiet for a beat. You're in love with her. I barely know her. That's not a no. Dylan didn't have an answer for that, so he just said goodbye and hung up. Sarah's house was chaos as always. 3 kids under 8, toys everywhere, a dog that barked at shadows. But it was warm and loud and safe, and when Sarah pulled Dylan into a hug, he felt something in his chest loosen. You look like hell, she said. Thanks. Maya told me about the cameras. What did you get yourself into? Long story. I've got time. They sat at her kitchen table after the kids were in bed, and Dylan told her everything. The house, Serena, the evidence, the choices that had seemed right at the time but were about to cost him everything. Sarah listened without interrupting, which was more restraint than he'd expected from his sister. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You love her, she said finally. Why does everyone keep saying that? Because it's obvious. You wouldn't be risking everything for someone you didn't care about. Sarah reached across and squeezed his hand. But Dylan, what about Maya? If you go to prison, I'll fight it. Tom thinks you're an idiot. He told me that when I called him earlier. Dylan blinked. You called my lawyer? Someone has to look out for you since you're clearly not doing it yourself. Sarah's voice cracked. You're my brother. Maya's my niece. I can't just sit here and watch you destroy your life for a woman who threw you under the bus on television. She did that to protect me. By calling you incompetent and untrustworthy, some protection. It was strategy. She was saving herself, and you were collateral damage. Sarah stood pacing the kitchen. I get it. She's beautiful and complicated and probably the first woman you've cared about since Maya's mom. But Dylan, she's not worth losing your daughter over. I'm not going to lose Maya. You might not have a choice. The words hung there, cold and true. Dylan stared at his hands. What am I supposed to do? Turn on Serena? Tell the DA everything and watch them destroy her? Chibi? Yes. If it means protecting Maya. And what do I tell Maya? That I betrayed someone who trusted me because it was convenient? That the right thing only matters when it's easy? He looked up. What kind of lesson is that? Sarah's expression softened. The kind that keeps you out of prison. I can't do it, Sarah. I can't. His sister studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Then I hope she's worth it, because you're about to find out just how much you're willing to lose. Dylan spent the night on Sarah's couch, staring at the ceiling and thinking about gray eyes and impossible choices. Around 3 a.m., his phone buzzed with a text from another unknown number. This is Serena. Different phone again. I heard about the investigation. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. Dylan stared at the message for a long time before responding. Not your fault. We both made choices. 3 dots appeared immediately. I can fix this. My lawyers can make a deal. No deals. We stick to the plan. There is no plan, Dylan. There's just you taking the fall for my mistakes. Your ex's mistakes. Not yours. The dots appeared and disappeared several times before her next message came through. Why are you doing this? Dylan's thumb hovered over the keyboard. He thought about all the true answers. Because he cared about her. Because she deserved better. Because sometimes you had to fight even when you knew you'd lose. Instead, he typed, because it's right. Right doesn't always win. Then I guess we'll lose together. A long pause. Then, I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. Another pause. There's a hearing next week. The DA is petitioning for a grand jury investigation. My lawyers think they're going to indict both of us. Dylan's stomach dropped. How bad? Bad. Multiple felony counts. If convicted, we're looking at years, not months. He closed his eyes, thinking about Maya sleeping in Sarah's guest room, about his daughter's face when she asked if he was going to jail. I'm not flipping on you. You should. Save yourself. Already told you. We're in this together. The dots appeared and disappeared for almost a minute. Meet me tomorrow. There's something I need to tell you, something that might change your mind. Where? The house. 6 a.m. Before the press wakes up. I'll be there. Dylan? Yeah? Thank you for everything. He didn't respond to that. Just set the phone down and lay there in the dark, wondering what the hell she needed to tell him that was worth another risk. But he knew he'd be there at 6 a.m. anyway, because that's what you did when you cared about someone, even when it was stupid, especially when it was stupid. Dylan left Sarah's house at 5 a.m., leaving a note for Maya that he'd be back for breakfast. The drive to the Victorian was quiet, the sky just starting to gray at the edges, the world still asleep. Serena's car was already there when he arrived. She was standing on the porch in jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back, looking younger and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. When she saw him, her face crumpled with relief. You came. Said I would. They went inside and the house felt different now. Finished, empty, waiting for whatever came next. They stood in the kitchen where they'd shared so many lunches, and Dylan waited for her to speak. The documents we moved, Serena said finally. There's more than just evidence against my ex. There's evidence against Judge Morrison. Dylan went still. What? Bribes. Kickbacks. My ex paid Morrison to rule in his favor on multiple cases, including the asset freeze. She pulled out her phone and showed him photos, bank transfers, emails, recorded conversations. I've known for weeks. I was waiting for the right time to use it, but now we're about to be indicted. Yes. Serena's hands were shaking. If I give this to the FBI, Morrison goes down, and probably takes my ex with him. The charges against us would likely be dropped, or at least significantly reduced, because we were victims of a corrupt judge. Dylan stared at the evidence on her phone. Why didn't you use this before? Because once I release it, there's no taking it back. Morrison has connections, friends in high places. Going after a sitting judge could destroy what's left of my reputation, my company, everything. And there's no guarantee it would work. She looked up at him. But it's the only move we have left. The only way to protect you. What about protecting you? I can survive scandal? You can't afford to go to prison. Serena's voice broke. Dylan, you have a daughter, a life. You shouldn't lose everything because I dragged you into my mess. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose this. You chose wrong. She stepped closer, and he could see tears on her face. So I'm choosing for both of us. I'm giving the evidence to the FBI tomorrow. Whatever happens after that, we deal with it. Dylan thought about Morrison, about the way the judge had frozen Serena's assets on flimsy evidence, about Maya suspended for defending herself against the judge's son. Do it, he said. Serena blinked. What? Release the evidence, burn it all down. Dylan's jaw tightened. People like Morrison and your ex, they use the system to hurt people and get away with it because everyone's too scared to fight back. I'm done being scared. Dylan, this could get dangerous. If Morrison finds out before the FBI moves, then we'd better move fast. She stared at him, and something shifted in her expression. Surprise, admiration, something that looked dangerously like hope. You're serious. Dead serious. He stepped closer. You've been fighting alone for 18 months. Let me fight with you, for real this time. Serena reached up and touched his face, her palm warm against his cheek. This is going to get so much worse before it gets better. I know. We might lose everything. Then we'll lose it together. She smiled through her tears. You're an idiot. Yeah, but I'm your idiot. Serena laughed, broken and real, and then she was kissing him, desperate and grateful and terrified all at once. Dylan pulled her closer, tasting salt and coffee and the sharp edge of fear, and felt something in his chest finally click into place. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Serena pressed her forehead to his. I'm calling my lawyer. We're setting up a meeting with the FBI for this afternoon. Her voice was steady now, determined. And then we're going to watch Morrison's world burn. Together, Dylan said. Together. They stood there in the kitchen of the house they'd saved, holding each other like lifelines. And Dylan thought about Maya's question. Was it worth it? He still didn't know. But he was about to find out. The FBI office was a concrete building on the edge of downtown that looked exactly like what it was. A place where people's lives got examined under fluorescent lights and sorted into categories of guilty or not guilty. Dylan sat beside Serena in a conference room with gray walls and uncomfortable chairs, Jennifer Park on one side and Tom Breslin on the other. Across the table sat two federal agents, Special Agent Catherine Ross and her partner, whose name Dylan had already forgotten because he was too focused on not throwing up. Serena's hands were folded on the table in front of her, perfectly still, but Dylan could see the white of her knuckles. Let me make sure I understand, Agent Ross said, flipping through the documents Serena had provided. You're alleging that Judge Marcus Morrison accepted bribes from your ex-husband in exchange for favorable rulings in your divorce proceedings? I'm not alleging. I'm proving. Serena's voice was steady. The bank transfers are there. Offshore accounts, shell companies, the whole infrastructure. My ex wasn't subtle. Ross studied a page of financial records. And you obtained these documents how? They were mixed in with Vail Enterprises files that my ex had been storing at various properties. When I started untangling the company's finances, I found his personal corruption alongside the corporate fraud. Why didn't you come forward immediately? Serena's jaw tightened. Because I didn't know who to trust. Morrison wasn't the only judge my ex had connections with. I needed to be sure the evidence would actually be investigated instead of buried. And you're sure now? I'm desperate now. There's a difference. Ross's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes that might have been respect. What about you, Mr. Cross? What's your role in all this? Dylan felt Tom's warning hand on his arm, but he answered anyway. I was hired to repair Ms. Vail's property. When I discovered she was being targeted by her ex, I helped protect evidence that proved his corruption. That's it. That's obstruction of justice. That's protecting a victim from a corrupt system. The law doesn't make that distinction. Maybe it should. Heck. Ross leaned back in her chair, studying him. You're aware that cooperating with this investigation doesn't guarantee immunity from charges related to the evidence tampering? I'm aware. And you're still willing to testify about what you know? Yes. Why? Dylan glanced at Serena, then back at Ross. Because some things are more important than staying safe. The agent's expression softened just slightly. I hope you mean that. Because if we pursue this, Judge Morrison will use every connection he has to destroy both of you. Your lives will be examined, picked apart, questioned. Everything you've ever done will be scrutinized for ammunition. Let him try, Serena said quietly. I'm done hiding. Ross exchanged a look with her partner, then nodded. All right, we'll open an investigation. But I need everything. All the documents, all the recordings, complete chain of custody for how you obtained them. And I need both of you available for extensive interviews. You'll have whatever you need, Jennifer Park said. The meeting lasted another 2 hours. They went through the evidence piece by piece, Dylan and Serena explaining how they'd discovered it, moved it, protected it. Ross asked sharp questions that made Dylan's head spin, but Serena handled them with the same controlled precision she brought to everything else. When they finally left the FBI building, the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink like something out of a postcard. Serena stopped on the sidewalk, breathing hard, like she'd been holding her breath for hours. We did it, she said. We actually did it. Did we? Dylan's hands were shaking. Or did we just paint targets on our backs? Both probably. Serena turned to face him, and she was smiling, really smiling, the kind of smile that transformed her whole face. But at least we're not doing it alone anymore. Jennifer Park cleared her throat. I hate to interrupt, but we need to discuss next steps. The press is going to get wind of this fast, and when they do, I'll handle it, Serena said. I'm done letting other people control the narrative. What does that mean? Tom asked warily. It means I'm calling a press conference. Tonight, before Morrison or my ex can spin this. She pulled out her phone. I'm telling the truth, all of it. Dylan's stomach dropped. Serena, that's dangerous, reckless, potentially career-ending? She met his eyes. Yeah, but it's also the only way forward. I spent 18 months trying to be strategic, trying to stay 3 steps ahead, trying to control every variable. And all it got me was cornered and desperate. Her voice steadied. I'm done playing their game. Time to play mine. Jennifer started to argue, but Serena was already walking toward her car, phone pressed to her ear, setting things in motion. Tom looked at Dylan. Your girlfriend's insane. She's not my girlfriend. Keep telling yourself that. Dylan watched Serena pace the parking lot, animated and determined, and felt something in his chest expand. Yeah, he said quietly. She kind of is. The press conference was scheduled for 8 p.m. at Vail Enterprises headquarters. Serena spent 2 hours preparing, Jennifer Park trying to convince her to soften the message, while Serena refused every suggestion. Dylan sat in the back of the room and watched her transform. Watched the armor go on piece by piece until she looked every inch the CEO who'd built an empire. But this time, the armor wasn't meant to hide. It was meant to fight. At 7:50, Maya called. Dad, you're on TV. Aunt Sarah's freaking out. I know, kiddo, I'm sorry. It's complicated. Are you okay? The question, asked in Maya's small, worried voice, almost broke him. Yeah, I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. Is the pretty lady there? Dylan glanced at Serena, who was reviewing notes with Jennifer. Yeah, she's here. Good. Tell her I said she better be nice to you this time. Despite everything, Dylan smiled. I'll pass that along. Love you, Dad. Love you too, kiddo. I'll call you after, okay? Okay. He hung up as Serena approached, nerves showing through the professional mask. Your daughter, she asked. Yeah. She says you better be nice to me this time. Serena's expression softened. Smart kid. The smartest. I'm terrified, Serena admitted quietly. What if this backfires? What if Morrison's connections are too strong and the FBI can't touch him? What if I just made everything worse? Dylan stood and took her hand. Then we deal with it. together, took her. You keep saying that. Because I keep meaning it. Serena squeezed his hand, then straightened her shoulders. Okay, let's do this. So, the conference room was packed with reporters, cameras, bright lights that made Dylan's eyes water. Serena walked to the podium like she owned the room, and maybe she did. Thank you for coming on short notice, she began. I have a statement to make, and then I'll take questions. She outlined everything. Her ex-husband's corruption, Vail Enterprises' fraudulent practices that she'd discovered after taking over, the 18 months she'd spent gathering evidence while fighting a divorce engineered to silence her. She named Morrison, named the bribes, named every piece of corruption she could prove. The reporters erupted with questions, but Serena held up a hand. I'm not finished. I also need to address my own actions. She paused, and Dylan saw her swallow hard. Several weeks ago, I hired a contractor named Dylan Cross to repair a property I inherited. In the course of that work, I asked him to help me protect evidence from my ex-husband's legal team. Mr. Cross acted in good faith, believing he was helping a victim of corruption. Any legal consequences from those actions should fall on me, not him. Dylan's chest tightened. She was doing it again, protecting him, taking the fall. But here's what I want people to understand, Serena continued, voice stronger now. The system that was supposed to protect me became a weapon against me. A judge who was supposed to be impartial took bribes to rule against me. A legal process that was supposed to be fair became a tool for intimidation. And when I tried to fight back the right way, with lawyers and evidence and patience, I was threatened, harassed, and cornered. She leaned forward, hands gripping the podium. So yes, I bent some rules. Yes, I asked someone to help me protect evidence that a corrupt judge would have destroyed. And I'd do it again. Because sometimes the only way to get justice is to refuse to play by rules written by people who profit from injustice. The room exploded. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing. The whole circus Dylan had been dreading. But Serena just smiled, calm and fierce and done apologizing. She took questions for 30 minutes, handling each one with surgical precision. Yes, she'd contacted the FBI. Yes, she understood the personal risk. No, she wouldn't be resigning from Vail Enterprises. Yes, she believed Morrison would be held accountable. When someone asked about Dylan, she looked directly at the camera. Mr. Cross is one of the most honest people I've ever met. He saw someone in trouble and chose to help, even when it put him at risk. If we're prosecuting people for that, then we've lost sight of what matters. Dylan's throat went tight. Finally, Jennifer Park ended the conference, and Serena was swept away by her legal team for damage control. Dylan slipped out the side exit and found himself in the parking lot, breathing hard, adrenaline crashing. His phone buzzed. Sarah. What the hell was that? That was Serena Vail declaring war. Dylan, she just admitted to obstruction of justice on national television. Do you understand how bad? I know. Then why are you laughing? Dylan realized he was. Because she's either the bravest person I've ever met or the craziest, and I can't tell which. Both, probably. Sarah sighed. You really care about her. Yeah, I really do. Then I hope she's worth it, because you just bet everything on her. I know, Dylan said again, but I think she'd do the same for me. He hung up and stood there in the dark parking lot, waiting for Serena to emerge. The next 72 hours were chaos. The FBI moved fast. Search warrants executed. Morrison's financial records seized. Subpoenas issued. The judge tried to fight back, calling in favors and threatening lawsuits, but the evidence was too solid and the public attention too intense. By Wednesday, Morrison was under formal investigation. By Thursday, Serena's ex was being questioned. By Friday, both men had lawyers and were pointing fingers at each other, the united front crumbling under pressure. Dylan spent the week fielding calls from reporters, protecting Maya from the media circus, and watching his phone blow up with messages from people he hadn't talked to in years. Marcus, the reliable one, called to say he believed in Dylan, and if he needed work when this was over, he had jobs waiting. 3 former clients reached out to offer character references. Even Tom Breslin grudgingly admitted that the press conference might have actually helped their case. Public sympathy's shifting, Tom said during a check-in call. You and Serena are starting to look like victims who fought back. Morrison and the ex look like corrupt bastards who got caught. The DA might decide prosecuting you isn't worth the political cost. Might? Welcome to the legal system. Nothing's certain until it's over. Dylan didn't see Serena for 3 days. She was locked down with lawyers and FBI agents, giving depositions and building the case. But she texted every night. Still alive. Miss you. Hang in there. This'll be over soon. Thank you for not running. Dylan saved every message. On Saturday, a week after the press conference, Serena finally came up for air. She called Dylan at noon, voice exhausted but steady. Can you meet me at the house? I'll be there in 20. The Victorian looked different in the winter sunlight, solid, complete, like it had finally decided to stop falling apart. Dylan found Serena sitting on the porch steps, dressed in jeans and an old coat, hair loose around her shoulders. She looked up when he approached, and her smile was tired but real. Hey yourself. Dylan sat beside her. You okay? I've given 12 hours of testimony, signed about 1,000 documents, and had my entire life examined by federal agents. So yeah, I'm peachy. That good, huh? Serena leaned against his shoulder. They think they have enough to charge Morrison and my ex. Multiple counts each. Bribery, fraud, conspiracy. My lawyers are negotiating a deal for my testimony, but it looks like the obstruction charges against us might get dropped in exchange for cooperation. Dylan's heart kicked. Seriously? Seriously. Turns out when you hand the FBI a judge on a silver platter, they're willing to overlook some creative evidence preservation. She turned to look at him. You might actually get out of this clean. We, Dylan corrected, we might get out of this clean. Serena's eyes were bright. Yeah, we might. They sat there in comfortable silence, watching clouds drift across the winter sky. I'm selling the house, Serena said finally. A family from Portland made an offer. They want to restore it, turn it into a bed and breakfast. That's good. Your grandmother would have liked that. Yeah, she would have. Serena picked at a loose thread on her coat. I'm also restructuring Vail Enterprises. New leadership, new policies, complete transparency. It's going to take years to undo all the damage my ex did, but I think we can get there. You will, Dylan said with certainty. You're stubborn enough. She laughed. High praise. It's the truth. Serena was quiet for a moment, then took his hand. There's something else. I've been thinking about what comes next. After all this is settled. Yeah? I don't want to go back to being the person I was before. Cold, controlled, pushing everyone away. She met his eyes. I don't want to be alone anymore. Dylan's heart was pounding. What are you saying, E? I'm saying I want to try, you and me. For real this time. She squeezed his hand. I know it's complicated. I know I'm still fighting legal battles and you have Maya and neither of us has any idea what we're doing, but yes. Serena blinked. I didn't finish. Don't care. Yes. She smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Dylan had ever seen. You're sure? Because this isn't going to be easy. The press will be watching. People will judge. There'll be... Dylan kissed her, cutting off the spiral of worry. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Serena was laughing. Was that a yes? That was a hell yes. She kissed him again, softer this time. And Dylan thought about all the warnings he'd ignored and all the risks he'd taken and how absolutely worth it this moment was. There's one condition, he said when they finally separated. Serena raised an eyebrow. Oh? You have to meet Maya properly. No more being the pretty lady on TV. Oops. I'm terrified of your 10-year-old daughter. You should be. She's tougher than both of us combined. Serena smiled. Okay, when? Tonight. I'm making spaghetti. It's terrible spaghetti, but it's tradition. I'd love terrible spaghetti. Gee, our steeds. They sat on the porch of the house they'd saved together, holding hands and watching the afternoon fade to evening, and Dylan thought about everything that had led them here. The desperation and fear and impossible choices that had forced two strangers into each other's lives. Some people would say they'd done it wrong, broken rules, bent laws, risked too much. And maybe those people were right. But sitting there with Serena's hand in his, Dylan couldn't bring himself to regret a single choice. Because here's what he'd learned. Sometimes the right thing isn't the safe thing. Sometimes helping someone means risking everything. And sometimes the people worth fighting for are the ones who fight just as hard for you. Maya was suspicious when Dylan brought Serena home that evening. She opened the door, took took one look at them standing together, and crossed her arms. "You're the lady from TV." "I am," Serena said. "You must be Maya. I've heard a lot about you." "I've heard a lot about you, too." Most of it was Dad yelling at the television. Maya studied her with an intensity that made Serena shift uncomfortably. "Are you going to hurt my dad again?" The question was so direct, so Maya, that Dylan almost intervened, but Serena held up a hand. "That's a fair question, and the honest answer is, I might. Not on purpose, but I'm kind of a mess and I'm still figuring out how to do relationships without screwing them up." She crouched down to Maya's level. "But I can promise I'll try really hard not to. And if I do mess up, I'll apologize and try to fix it. Is that good enough?" Maya considered this. "Do you like sharks?" Serena blinked at the subject change. "I don't know much about them." "They're survivors. They've been around for millions of years because they're tough and adaptable and they don't give up." Maya's expression was serious. "Dad says you're like that, are you?" "I'm trying to be." "Good." Maya stepped aside. "You can come in, but if the spaghetti's bad, you have to say it's good anyway. It's tradition." Serena laughed, surprised and genuine. "Deal. Ich ought such out sure." Dinner was exactly as terrible as promised. Overcooked pasta, sauce from a jar, garlic bread that was somehow both burnt and soggy. But Maya kept up a running commentary on sharks, and Serena asked questions like she actually cared, and Dylan watched them connect over marine biology and burnt bread, and felt something settle in his chest. After dinner, Maya disappeared to do homework, leaving Dylan and Serena alone in the kitchen doing dishes. "She's incredible," Serena said, scrubbing a pot. "Terrifying, but incredible." "Yeah, she is." Dylan dried a plate. "What do you think? Can you handle being part of this chaos?" Serena looked around the small kitchen, dishes stacked in the drainer, Maya's drawings covering the fridge, the comfortable mess of a life fully lived. "I think I'd like to try," she said quietly. Dylan set down the dish towel and pulled her close. "Then let's try." They stood there in his cramped kitchen, holding each other while water dripped from the faucet, and Maya's music played faintly from her room. And Dylan thought about how home wasn't a place. It was the people you chose to fight for. The legal resolution took another 3 months. Morrison was indicted on 14 counts of bribery and corruption. Serena's ex faced similar charges, plus additional fraud counts related to Vail Enterprises. Both men tried to cut deals, but the evidence was overwhelming and public pressure was intense. Morrison resigned from the bench in disgrace. The ex lost his business licenses and most of his assets in the settlement. The charges against Dylan and Serena were formally dropped in exchange for their continued cooperation with the prosecution. Vail Enterprises survived, barely. Serena spent months rebuilding trust, apologizing to communities her ex had hurt, establishing oversight and accountability measures. It was slow, exhausting work. But gradually, the company stabilized. Dylan got his contractor's license back without conditions. Jobs started coming in again. First a trickle, then a flood. As word spread about what he'd done and why, turned out people liked hiring the guy who'd risked everything to help someone in trouble. Maya's suspension was quietly reversed when the new judge, reviewing the school disciplinary records, found inconsistencies in Morrison's son's account. Tyler Morrison transferred schools 3 months later. Maya never mentioned him again. Through it all, Dylan and Serena figured out how to build something real. It wasn't smooth. They argued about boundaries and schedules and how much of Serena's mess Maya should be exposed to. They screwed up and apologized and learned each other's sharp edges. But they showed up. Every day they showed up. 6 months after the press conference, Serena invited Dylan and Maya to the reopening of the Victorian as the Ridgemont Rose Bed and Breakfast. The new owners had restored it beautifully, the same structure Dylan had saved but filled with light and life now. "It's perfect," Serena said, standing in the kitchen where they'd shared so many lunches. Exactly what she would have wanted. "Your grandmother?" "Yeah." Serena squeezed his hand. "Thank you for helping me save it." "We saved it together." "Yeah, we did." Maya was exploring the second floor, exclaiming over the fancy bathrooms and 4-poster beds. Her voice drifted down. "Dad, can we stay here sometime? It's so cool." Dylan and Serena exchanged a look. "What do you think?" he asked. Weekend getaway? With a 10-year-old chaperone? She's very thorough. Serena laughed. Then yes, let's do it. They walked through the house one last time, saying goodbye to the place that had brought them together, and Dylan thought about second chances. About how sometimes the worst circumstances lead to the best outcomes. About how fighting for someone else can help you find yourself. Outside, in the winter sunshine, Maya was taking pictures of the house with Dylan's phone. It's for my project on local history, she explained. I'm writing about houses that almost died but got saved. That's a good subject, Serena said. I know. Mrs. Peterson said it's very mature. Maya looked between them. Can I ask you guys something? Sure, kiddo, Dylan said. Are you going to get married? Dylan choked on air. Serena went very still. That's a complicated question, Dylan managed. Not really. Either you are or you aren't. Maya's expression was serious. Because if you are, I think you should do it here, at the house, since it's where you met. Serena recovered first. We've only been together 6 months. So, you've known each other longer than that. And you already did the hard part, fighting for each other when it was dangerous. Getting married would be easy. Dylan looked at Serena. Serena looked at Dylan. She's got a point, he said. She really does. Serena was smiling. But maybe we should try a few more months first. Make sure we're doing this for the right reasons. That's fair, Maya said. But I'm just saying, this house is perfect for weddings, and I'd look really good as a junior bridesmaid. She skipped off toward the truck, leaving Dylan and Serena staring after her. Did we just get marriage advice from a 10-year-old? Serena asked. I think we did. And was she right? Dylan pulled Serena close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the winter air and the possibility of everything they could build together. Ask me in a few months, he said. I'm going to hold you to that. I'm counting on it. They stood there in front of the house that had almost destroyed them and ended up saving them instead. And Dylan thought about all the warnings that had come too late, about how some risks were worth taking, about how the best things in life were usually the ones you didn't plan for. His phone buzzed with a text from Tom Breslin. Morrison sentenced today. 8 years federal prison. Your girl took down a judge. How's it feel? Dylan showed the message to Serena. She read it and smiled, fierce and satisfied, and still a little surprised that they'd actually won. How does it feel? She asked. Dylan thought about everything they'd been through. The fear and fighting and impossible choices, the way Serena had looked at him in her grandmother's bedroom and chosen to trust him. The way Maya had welcomed this complicated, guarded woman into their lives because she saw past the armor to the person underneath. It feels right, he said. Finally, Serena kissed him, soft and sweet, and Maya made gagging noises from the truck. And Dylan laughed against Serena's mouth because this chaos and love and hard-won peace was exactly where he was supposed to be. Sometimes you don't find your people in safe places. Sometimes you find them in the wreckage. In the middle of the fight when you're both too stubborn or too broken or too desperate to walk away. And sometimes those are the connections that matter most. The ones forged in fire, tested by fear, and strong enough to survive anything that comes after. Dylan had spent years trying to keep his life simple, controlled, safe for Maya, and he'd succeeded mostly. But simple didn't mean whole, controlled didn't mean happy. It took a falling apart house and a woman with more walls than rooms to teach him that some complications were worth embracing, that protecting the people you loved sometimes meant taking risks, that the difference between reckless and brave was whether you showed up for the aftermath. 6 months later, on a spring evening when the cherry blossoms were blooming and the world felt full of second chances, Dylan took Serena back to the Victorian, now the Ridgemont Rose, alive with guests and laughter. They stood in the garden behind the house, and Dylan pulled a small box from his pocket. Maya was right, he said. We did the hard part already. Everything else is just showing up. Serena's eyes filled with tears. Dylan Cross, are you proposing? Yeah, I am. He opened the box to reveal a simple ring, nothing fancy, nothing that tried to be more than it was. Marry me. Fight with me. Build something real with me. And let's do it right here, where we both almost lost everything and found each other instead. Serena laughed through her tears. That's the worst romantic speech I've ever heard. I'm a contractor, not a poet. I know. That's why I love you. She kissed him before he could respond, and when she pulled back, she was smiling that smile that still made his heart stop. Yes, she said. Yes to all of it. Dylan slipped the ring on her finger, and somewhere in the house, Maya was probably already planning the wedding, and the future was uncertain and complicated and absolutely worth every risk they'd taken to get here. Because here's the truth, nobody tells you. The right person isn't the one who makes life easier. The right person is the one who makes the hard parts bearable, the one who shows up when it's scary, the one who fights beside you instead of for you and trusts you to do the same. Dylan had learned that the hard way. In a falling-apart house, with a woman who'd warned him to stay away, during 6 weeks that changed everything. And standing there in the spring garden, with Serena's hand in his, and their whole messy, complicated, beautiful future stretching out ahead, he wouldn't change a single moment. Not the warnings, not the risks, not the impossible choices that led them here. Because sometimes the best stories start with someone saying, "Don't get involved." And the best lives begin the moment you decide to get involved anyway.